Welcome everyone to today's event Made in Singapore, Building Singapore's Digital Future by SG Innovate and General Assembly. I'm Ziying from SG Innovate, and if you're new to us, we are a government-owned organization in Singapore with the mission to build deep tech innovations from Singapore for the world. We invest in and help build deep tech startups in the fields of artificial intelligence, medtech, and quantum tech, just to name a few. We work with entrepreneurial scientists and clinicians to help bring their innovative research from lab to market, and we also develop tech talents and engage with a vibrant deep tech ecosystem. Today, SG Innovate is happy to collaborate with our longtime partner, General Assembly, to kickstart the Made in Singapore series, a 2-week-long virtual event series celebrating the innovators, rule breakers, creators, and businesses putting Singapore on the map. As the first event, we are glad to have the Singapore leaders who are shaping policies and developing tools to build Singapore's digital future here today for a meaningful panel discussion. Just some house rules. During the webinar, if you have any questions, please post them in the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen, and do feel free to use the chat box to connect with our wider community. Before we begin, I'd like to invite our friend and partner, Aziza Shirin, Regional Director of General Assembly, to share more about the Made in Singapore series. Aziza, please.
Thank you so much, Zing. Hi, everyone. It's so nice to see so many people join our event today. My name is Aziza, and I run General Assembly in Singapore. So for those of you guys who are new to us, GA is a tech education company, and we focus on upskilling and reskilling individuals as well as enterprises in some of today's most in-demand skill sets, such as data science, software engineering, and UX design. As part of our community building efforts, we do a lot of events in areas like tech, entrepreneurship, as well as other trending topics. So building on all of this, we run an annual event. It's called Made in Singapore. And we're very excited to run it this year in conjunction with National Day. And this event series, it brings together all of these trailblazers and trendsetters and founders and innovators who are making waves in Singapore in different industries. So firstly, thank you so much to all of our partners and speakers listed over here. We've got a great lineup of events coming up. So if you have not registered for any of these, what you can do is just go to madeinsingapore.ga.com, or you can just take your phone out and, I'm sure all of you guys are used to Safe Entry by now. This isn't Safe Entry, it's for going to the website. So you just go in there and you can register for any event. It's free of charge, but we would encourage you to RSVP just so that you can reserve your spot, because we do have limited spots available. So some of the exciting events that we have coming up for this week is we've got one tomorrow on homegrown tech startups, where we've got the founders behind Asian Parent, 99.co, Caro, Horangi, and Shopback. And we've got the CEO of Tech in Asia moderating that panel. And on Thursday, we've got a panel of venture capitalists who are going to be talking about investing in the next big idea. So we've got a corporate venture capitalist, we've got an angel investor, and we've got a seed to Series A venture capitalist. They're going to be talking to you about what they look for when they invest in a startup and, how they make their investment decisions. So if any of you are looking at investing, or if you're looking at figuring out how to raise funding for your startups, please go ahead and join it. And you can see the list of all of the other ones we've got coming up. We've got everything from fashion to sustainability to food. It's going to be quite a fun series. And to kick us off for this event series, we're very thankful to our longtime partners, SG Innovate. We're kicking off our very first event with them. It's called Building Singapore's Digital Future. And, this is featuring civil service leaders who are behind a lot of the policies and tools that are shaping what you and I use on a daily basis. And they're going to talk to you about their vision for the future. So we've got Jason Bay, who's the Senior Director at GovTech. We've got Lawrence Liu, who's the Director for AI Singapore. And we've got Dr. Rick Goh, who's the Director of Computing and Intelligence at A*STAR. And moderating the panel is the brilliant Ziki Sim. She's the Head of Community and Brand at SG Innovate, and she's going to lead a very lively discussion. So if you guys have any thoughts during this whole period and you want to tweet, or you want to Instagram or make a post on social media, please do use the hashtag Made in SG 2020 and do tag SG Innovate and GA so that we can respond to you. And we would love some feedback. So we're going to be sending out a feedback link to you after this. So you don't have to remember this URL. So, we would love to get some feedback from you so that we can continue producing great events. So I'm going to stop my screen share right now, and over to you, Ziki.
Thank you, Aziza. Aziza, you were one of the first people I met when I first joined SG Innovate, and I'm so grateful for the great partnership that we've been having with GA. So thanks for opening the session with us, and thank you for the wonderful partnership.
Thank you so much, Ziki. We couldn't have made it without you guys. Really appreciate it.
Very cool. Good afternoon, everyone, and for all of you joining us from all over the world. It's always exciting to have people joining us. I see that there are people from India, from across Asia. Please do use the chat function to connect with folks and to share with us and tell us where you're dialing in from, because it's with the webinar, it's actually amazing. We've been very much more accessible to people from outside of Singapore. So let's get started on today's session. The topic, as was already mentioned, is building Singapore's digital future. Singapore is on a mission to lead the way in digital transformation. The Smart Nation vision is helping the nation stride ahead in our digital future. In the current pandemic environment, it certainly seems even more urgent right now. So that brings us to the question of how governments and corporations should accelerate the use of tech solutions and services while balancing the concerns of individuals on the adoption of such tools. I would like to thank our panelists here today for taking the time to share your insights on this topic. So before we get into the discussion proper, I'd like to invite our panelists to please give a very short introduction about yourselves. Lawrence, can I ask you to begin?
Yeah, hi. Hi, everyone. My name is Lawrence, and I'm the director in AI Singapore. And I run the AI innovation pillar, which basically focuses on getting AI out to the industry, helping as many companies to build AI solutions as possible, especially those that are not already in the market. So we co-create solutions together with the industry, leveraging the expertise we have in the university ecosystem in Singapore, including research institutions like A*STAR. Thank you.
Thank you, Lawrence. Jason, who's the Senior Director of GovTech.
Yeah, hi everyone. My name is Jason Bay. As Ziki mentioned, I'm currently in GovTech now. I lead a team called Government Digital Services. You can check out more about what we do at the URL hive.gov.sg. I think in terms of impact, we are probably the largest in-house software development team right now. We run projects supporting multiple agencies at the ministry and stat board level, more than 40 projects. At last count, it's now more than 50 because of all the related COVID work that we've done. So we have bits and pieces in Trace Together, Safe Entry, the Mask Aware websites, COVID support grant portals, and as well as I think some stuff for the general election that was just held. So I think generally through all of these products, we're really in the business of helping agencies, the Singapore government at large, with digital transformation through app development, right? And actually, if you think about it, through the collaboration and partnership that we have with them, actually, we're going beyond digital transformation. At the end of the day, I think Minister Chan in the video earlier said that there's both technical as well as non-technological related change needed in order to drive transformation. And so I think at the end of the day, what we're really in the business of is transforming organizations. So very pleased to be here.
We'd certainly love to be hearing more about that. You guys are being kept very, very busy during the pandemic. Last but certainly not least, Dr. Rick Goh from IHPC. Could you please share a little bit about yourself?
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Rick. I'm happy to be here to share. I lead the Computing and Intelligence Department at IHPC A*STAR. So within the department, we have about more than 60 scientists and engineers in the department. Right, so just to cover briefly what we do, we focus on two research areas, artificial intelligence and advanced computing. So within AI, we have teams working on like physics-based AI that couples modeling and simulation plus AI. Right, so for example, to generate additional data, to enhance interpretability and have physics consistency. And we have teams in multimodal AI to couple different data modalities and to work with various clinicians across different hospitals. I have teams in efficient AI, autonomous AI, and also safe AI. right? So something to think about is that as we deploy AI solutions, we also need to be aware that the models could be susceptible to attacks, right? So for advanced computing, our focus is in HPC. So that's where I know Lawrence way back, right? Where we speed up algorithms and applications using the GPUs, FPGAs, and custom AI chips. And for decentralized computing, we are working on things like blockchain and federated learning. So my team actually work on many real-world applications in various domains like digital health tech, right? We work with SingHealth and also have been creating an A-Star spin-off called Echo.ai, which there was a video on it. And advanced manufacturing and engineering, where we work with various companies like Rolls-Royce and also large local enterprises in Singapore.
Lovely, thank you. So we have a good number of people that have joined us today. We've got over 250 people that are attending, and interestingly from India, from Malaysia, Indonesia. So thank you all for joining, and we will be taking questions from the floor. So do key in your questions in the Q&A box and vote for the questions that you'd like the panel to answer, and we will address them as many as we can about 15 minutes prior to the end of the session. Okay, so let's start with this first question. I'd like to ask the panelists. In your various capacities, you're playing a very important role in Singapore's digitalization journey. I'd like you to share with us what is the most fulfilling part of your job. And it'd be also great if you could share some examples of the programs that you've been involved in. Can I start with Jason? You're in the GovTech is very busy.
Yeah, sure. Although actually I must say that the journey that I've had is wider than just my time at GovTech, right? I used to work in the Ministry of Comms and Information. And if you think about the whole digitalization journey that we're embarking on in Singapore, it splits into, I think, broadly what we've termed the digital economy, digital society, and digital government pillars, right? So within the digital economy, I think many of the people in the audience will be familiar with some of the initiatives targeting workers, targeting companies. So the Tech Skills Accelerator programs and related initiatives, SG Digital, Singapore Goes Digital. Within the digital society front, I think there's always this part about education for people who are maybe more prone to being digitally excluded, and we need to make sure that we provide solutions that cater to them as well. I think the more recent part that I've seen is really government services, right? Facilitating citizen transactions with the government, allowing people to do these transactions anytime, anywhere. And in a sense, government today sees itself very much like the private sector. Like if you had a bank, you would have a banking app and you would open up the app and you would see a whole bunch of features around loans, credit, deposits, different transactions that you can run with the bank. And I think the government is also looking to drive some of that. So I mentioned this a little bit in my own introduction, but really the most fulfilling part of all these initiatives for me is not necessarily the technical aspect. I was trained as an engineer, but I've not really practiced as an engineer. I've been more mainly in public policy. So for me, the change management, the mindset changes in terms of people's careers when you talk about Tesla, in terms of company business processes when you talk about SG Digital, the way government policies are formulated and implemented now, that's so powerful, and that potential is just completely lost if you focus only on the technology. So I think there's always this tendency, I guess, as humans, we fall into habitual behaviors. We freeze our behaviors, and I think digitalization is a huge process of unfreezing our behaviors, taking what seems threatening, and I think that was a theme that came up in the video just now as well, taking what seems to be a threatening theme and giving people the assurance that there is a better experience at the end of a journey that they embark on. So that for me, I think without going into too many specifics, that for me is the real, the light bulb moment when you see it happen in your partnerships, in our partnerships with our agency stakeholders, the product owners in the ministries and the stat boards. So yeah.
Yeah, and also I guess the opportunity to be able to create real impact, right? That
indeed.
Currently the pandemic is presenting those kind of opportunities. We can get into a bit more. Rick, what about yourself from the research perspective? Because that's what you're focused in. Share a little bit from your perspective, please.
Okay. So within A-Star, or at least for myself, I find my work fulfilling in multiple fronts, right? be it continuous learning, right, between you and the team, working on cutting edge technologies, be able to publish in the world's top conference and journals, and also talking to public agencies and private sector companies, right, to hear their needs, right, working and also solving those challenges as a team within A-Star in partnership with these entities. Manpower training, so we take in students, we train them through various projects, and also for staff, new staff training, right? I mean, I'm very actually happy that I'm proud that A-Star actually provide a lot of good opportunities for us to do continuous learning and to contribute for many of these things. And perhaps just to give just a few concrete examples, right? Because we have worked on various challenges across different domains. One recent collaboration with SingHealth is for COVID-19 patients, right? So this in a digital health tech space, where we develop a scalable, efficient, and secure platform to both disseminate useful information to the residents, to the patients, and also to collect data for patient monitoring. And we coined this app as Dr. COVID, right, which is essentially a smart chatbot. So this multilingual platform supports multiple languages, right, and including Bengali. And this is important because more than 50% of the workers do not speak or understand English, and some are even illiterate. So what we did was we gathered some of our AI colleagues to actually record the curated content from SingHealth and then put on Dr. COVID app. And it was actually used by more than 3,000 patients across the CCFs, right, community care facilities. And we have other features like, for example, broadcasting of critical information, sharing of social content in the form of various like formats like text, audio, and also video. So as to keep the patients engaged, right? And then we also do clinical and psychosocial monitoring. So all these contributions, not just technical, but also seeing it being deployed in the real world, I find it really fulfilling. Right? And in addition, the A-Star spin-off of Echo.ai. So not just working on projects, having startups, we also have our A-Star staff, who is so motivated in the startup that he actually left to join Echo.ai, right? To see, to continue to work on the various AI algorithms in the company, and also to grow as an individual, right? And I should certainly wish him every success.
It's interesting because my background is I came from corporate years and years before I joined SG Innovate, and coming into this part of the world of working with startups, the passion, I echo what you say, Rick, the passion of the startup community, because approaching not technology for the sake of technology, but actually using and deploying technology to address a particular problem. I think that's where you find that with bringing the ecosystem together, having like-minded people coming together to approach problems and looking at possible solutions to tackle these issues, I think is one of the most satisfying things for me personally. Lawrence, in AI Singapore, as I'm sure AI is becoming so important. Is no longer a frontier technology. I feel it's almost mainstream soon, but yet, right? There's so much that needs to be done in terms of educating people. From your perspective, in your role in AI Singapore, give us your view.
Yeah. So, AI Singapore, we have several programs to achieve what you just mentioned about educating people and getting AI projects executed for the industry. The core program that we have is the 100 experiments, and that is to work with industry that come to us with a specific AI problem, or a business problem which they think AI can be used. And after evaluating that, working with researchers and so on, if we think it's something that we can help, then we'll co-invest to help the company build out that solution. And what has been really fulfilling is that we have actually found a way to use each project that we support to train more Singaporeans in getting into this AI space. And that's our AI apprenticeship program. So every project that AI Singapore funds, we put 2 to 3 Singaporeans, right, and deep skill them in AI. So this has been something that has proven to be wildly successful. And the apprentice that gets into this apprenticeship program are not students, okay? We have to, clear a lot of misconception. They are not students. They are not attached to your company. They are actually working as part of an engineering team that will actually build out a solution in 7 months, in 2 to 3 week sprints, right? Over 7 months. And the AI solution that's built actually goes into deployment. So some of the companies that we work with includes people like Expedia, IBM, Sompo. Sompo just recently won a business award for their AI fraud system, which was actually co-developed together with AI Singapore with our apprentices. So our apprentices are all Singaporeans. They come from all walks of life. And we just did a analysis last week for a meeting. And what was interesting is that the whole cohort of apprentices, and every cohort we have 20, 30, sometimes 40, 30% are engineers, 20% are computer science background, and the rest actually come from a mix of the hard sciences, whether it's physics, biology, and social sciences and business. So what is really telling us is that to do AI and machine learning, you can come from any walks of life as long as you are passionate about learning, you love to solve problems, and you enjoy looking at data. It really does not matter what first degree or second degree you have, right? So what has really been very fulfilling and made a lot of impact is that we were able to find a niche segment of Singaporeans who have been upskilling themselves the last 2 or 3 years and learning, Python on their own, learning machine learning on their own. I even have one PMAT that basically said he had to dig out his son's university textbooks on maths and stats and spend a year to learn that, and then went on to Python and machine learning and so on. And after 3 years, he got himself to a level that he could actually get into our apprenticeship program. So it's really very heartfelt to see Singaporeans stepping up to take on this challenge to transform themselves and ride this new AI wave.
And a lot of these programs, yes, is open to everyone, not just the Singaporeans, but certainly with a lot of the government initiatives. We talk a lot, all 3 of you panelists have spoken about continuous learning, and certainly that is a big push from the Singapore government. And there are a lot of grants and subsidies that are open, that are available to Singaporeans that really make lifelong learning a very affordable, an affordable activity that benefits all of us. So we encourage, everyone to continue to upskill yourselves. There are various programs, as Lawrence has mentioned, from AI Singapore, from SG Innovate, from GA, many of these courses that are available for all of us to continue to stay relevant, because technology keeps changing all the time, right? So I want to move the subject on, as we talk about accelerating the development and deployment of these new technologies. And we've already established that with COVID-19, that has certainly made it a lot more urgent. And Jason, you being in a hot seat with the launch of the different government sites, and apps such as Trace Together that you mentioned a few, there must be some challenges, right? I mean, dealing sometimes with the older folks, sometimes that can be challenging because they don't understand. But mindset, Lawrence, you talked about mindset as well. So share with us what some of these challenges you faced during the conceptualization and also the implementation periods. And tell us also, how did you overcome them?
Yeah, okay. I guess I'll go first. I don't know if you guys have seen this meme that's been circulating a bit. The meme goes with the line, who led digital transformation for your organization? And it's an MCQ question, multiple choice. So choice A is the CEO, choice B is the Chief Technology Officer, and choice C is COVID-19. And I think necessity is the mother of invention and innovation, right? And we're seeing it everywhere. So I don't think this is, it's not, you said I was in the hot seat. I think everyone is in the hot seat, right? And you're seeing, F&B outlets, hawkers even, restaurants, just embracing food delivery services overnight. Brick and mortar shops suddenly realize they all need an e-commerce strategy, or their revenue stream is just going to dry up. Video conferencing, I mean, Zoom was probably unheard of for quite a lot of people before this, and now Zoom is almost one of the, if not the default platform, it's certainly one of the top 2 or 3 platforms that people are using right now. Just over the weekend, I had an online karaoke session and a virtual durian tasting session where we had durians delivered, and then we were sampling durians on video conferencing and then sharing our tasting notes with each other. And I didn't even realize that you could do tasting notes for durians. I think, yes, there have been so many projects that we've undertaken, and I think it's really nice and invigorating to see that there are so many people who just are rising to the initiative, rising to the challenge, right? Pivoting. So this is happening for, at least in my domain, the universe that I see, the agencies that come to us and say, hey, we realize that we need a solution for this or a solution for that, and we need to roll this out really quickly. I think the challenge is everything is super urgent right now. So there's a bit of a fog of war, and we talk about agile software development, but this is almost hyper agile. I'll give you an example. When we released MaskAware on the 1st of February, that website, and I think we've, it's in public domain, we built the bulk of that website in about 8 hours, right? Between, I think it was 10 p.m. or 8 p.m. on the Friday. And I think we launched the website at 4 a.m. on Saturday. And we were still developing the website as we went along. So, we talked about continuous integration and deployment. We were deploying, I think, something like 40 different builds of the website within the first 7 days alone. So that's an average of about 6 builds per day, right? In the daylight hours, it's almost once every 2 hours. So
Jason, we lost you.
Can you hear me now?
okay.
Yep.
Oh, you've muted, Jason. I think you're something funky going on with your mic. You've muted yourself. Can you unmute? Something funky is happening. Okay, why don't we move on? Perhaps you could try to look to see what's going on there. Okay, if there's for Lawrence or Rick, if you've got any comments to the challenges.
Maybe just a quick one. So using the example of Dr. COVID, so it took us about 10 days to hear the need from our clinical partners, to find out the requirements, to develop the app, and then to launch the app for use by the SingHealth clinicians and ops teams for the COVID-19 patients. So our team is somewhat very highly motivated. They work day and night and over the weekends, right? We had stand-up meetings every day, right? Taking in new inputs provided by SingHealth partners who actually worked as the frontliners in the CCFs, right? Expo, The Resort, Bright Vision Hospital. And we are sort of their technical team, right? In a sense. And I'm really fortunate to have the A-Star and IHPC management behind us to support us by sort of reprioritizing our engagements and activities in order to support this meaningful work. And I must say that this is not the norm, right, for all the projects, right? The turnaround time is not 10 days usually, but rather it is this call of duty, right? And also our existing partnership with SingHealth, with SERI, with SNEC, that we hit the call of duty to respond very quickly. And also need to bear in mind that even though the team members are not all Singapore citizens, right? But we worked as one united team for the benefit of Singapore. So there was an immense amount of commitment and teamwork involved in order to make it happen.
Yeah, you know, and I always say this, right? It's the sum of all parts. It's not just one that works together that solves everything, but it is really in partnership from across the ecosystem that brings it all together. At this point, I do want to take this question because it's also related, but it's looking at it from a different perspective, from the other end of the spectrum. We talk about successes, but this question from Gilbert Thomas from IBM, asking the panelists to share some failures that we have seen and based on your experience working with these enterprises and giving your perspective on why they failed and what some of these enterprises should be looking out for when they embark on any particular project. Maybe from the AI Singapore perspective, Lawrence, maybe give your perspective as you work with various projects. What are some of these failures that you've seen and how can they be overcome? How can enterprises be addressing them to what are the areas they need to be looking at?
So that's a really interesting question. And actually, you know, it boils down to education, to understanding what is AI or machine learning and what is actually doable. So when we started the 100 Experiments program, when we talked to a lot of companies, and one of the reasons why we introduced AI for everyone, AI for industry, was there was a lack of understanding of what AI was capable of. There was a lot of fear, but there was a lot of misconception, and people basically just say, I have lots of data, can I just throw to AI and AI will tell me what's the strategy I need to do or execute for my business. So I wouldn't say there are failures because, you know, when the company don't understand or when they do not have the data, we don't even approve or take on those 100Es. So for the 100E projects that we take on, we have done our due diligence to make sure that company understand what they're getting into, they have the data sets and so on and so forth. We always see failures, not so much in the modeling part, okay? It is really the company is actually not data ready or not digital. We still encounter a lot of companies who actually have their data sets all over the place, in forms, in spreadsheets, which makes it nearly impossible to do any machine learning. And it will take the company easily a year or two to properly digitize and create the necessary architecture and metadata structure in place to even begin to do a basic data science and machine learning. So unfortunately, a lot of organizations in Singapore is at that stage. There are a few who are already digital. That's fantastic. Those are those companies that we are currently working with. Those that are not, we have no choice but to actually roll out new programs, right? So for example, we have rolled out a advisory service to actually take them through an AI journey of how to go from AI zero to AI hero. And that could easily take anywhere from 12 to 18 months, but no choice. We have to invest resources to help our SMEs, especially to step up.
Well, thanks, Lawrence. And Jason, I want to come back to you because I see you've sorted out your technical issues, but you know, just continuing where you left off, I also want to add in, well, kind of same added dimension around aging population and how can we make it accessible to this group of people, or you know, people who have less access, I guess. This also was a question that was posed by by John Cole from the floor.
Yeah. Okay. So let me try. Let me just do a sound check. Can you hear me now?
Perfect.
Okay. All right. So let's hope it doesn't glitch out. Actually, I wanted to jump in on something Lawrence said about data, about, you know, spreadsheets and, you know, data residing in different silos. I think if you think about this whole process of responding to COVID, we're finding, especially in contact tracing, which is one of the projects that is very close to my heart now, and here's the Trace Together t-shirt. the technology Trace Together itself was interesting, right? It was novel. It was the first time somebody had tried something like this, especially on national scale. But I think a lot of the work that we've done actually since then is working on the data fusion part. When people ask me, and even as the creator or lead developer for Trace Together, how can we make this more successful? I don't think it's about the Bluetooth technology per se. It's about what's underneath the water surface, right? So Trace Together looks like the tip of the iceberg. It's sexy, it's nice and all that, but it was all the data integration, right? Linking all the data that we're collecting with all the data that's coming in from different testing laboratories, public and private laboratories, integrating that with the whole contact tracing system that MOH uses, linking that also with the DOM, the systems that are used to manage the dormitories in Singapore, working with MOM and our colleagues from the joint task force that was stood up because of all the cases that we had within the migrant worker community, and syncing all of that up so that at any point in time you're able to figure out what is the status of a particular case. And what is that person's history? And all of this, I think, just underscores the point that it's really about getting the data fusion and the infrastructure going. It's not necessarily about having the best AI algorithm. I mean, one algorithm to another algorithm, there's going to be a bit of a marginal improvement. But if you don't give the data, if you don't even have access to the data, then actually everything just falters, right? And we realize that when we connect the pipes together, it's not just a technical issue. Everybody has different competing priorities and interests. Everybody is busy. If you're running operations, technology can seem to be a distraction sometimes. But what's really important is for the policy, for the operational, for the business users to see technology and the technologists as partners, and to listen to what is available, what is possible from the technological perspective. And then rethinking the business models and finding the best way to integrate them together. Because if you look at technology as just, a silver bullet, like, okay, I can't fix this problem. You guys can do stuff with software, right? It's magic, right? AI and ML and whatnot comes in, maybe throw in blockchain for good measure as well. Okay, make me a solution, come back to me in 3 months. It doesn't work like that. It's going to be an iterative process. And I think that underscores how agile, right? Capital A is not a term that's used to describe software development. It's actually a term to describe the mindset that needs to be embodied by everybody in the process, both on the business side as well as on the technology implementation side of things. So I think those have been simultaneously our biggest challenges, but also I think the biggest reasons for optimism as we walk through this journey. I'm going to go back to I think where I left off, which is I said that I was very heartened to see that there are people in government, all across government that we deal with, who are starting to embrace this culture of discontinuous change and being able to realize that what worked yesterday is not going to work going forward, right? But there's a lot of, it's a fog of war. So there's a lot of just rapid adaptation along the way. And I just cite a few examples. I think the one that speaks to the rapidly aging population question that John asked is the fact that, we, for Trace Together, we rolled out the app, right? And then we saw very quickly that, if we want this to be successful, I can't limit myself at the top line level by the number of people who have smartphones in Singapore. And we know that about 20% of the population does not have access to a smartphone. Many of them will be vulnerable for other reasons. And I think a lot of the talk about a lot of the what is becoming conventional wisdom about COVID is a pandemic like COVID actually exacerbates disparities and inequities in the population. Those who are digitally excluded will find themselves stuck at home and unable to avail themselves of services in the community, in society. Those who are already marginalized because of lower income levels, lower wealth levels, are also going to be marginalized, perhaps even more so because of COVID, because of lack of access to testing, to healthcare facilities and things like that. So with Trace Together, I think what we realized early on is it's not just the app, we need something else. And that's why we rolled out the token solution. And we're hoping that through distribution of that, we increase the denominator that we can hopefully target to 100% of the population as much as possible, because this is something where we say it's community-driven contact tracing, and we need the participation of as many people as we can. Other things that we've rolled out, some of you may have seen the app that is used at the community centers for mass distribution. We also have Safe Entry, and Safe Entry has an NRIC scanner. It's a mobile app that allows premise owners to scan your NRIC. They're actually the same app. We repurpose the same app for these two purposes. And that's, I think, the spirit of just continuous innovation and just, in a sense, reusing, but maybe a more crude way of putting it is cannibalizing your own products in order to develop new innovations. And I think those are some of the ideas that I want us to go away with. So partnership is important. The idea of just being able to embrace this continuous change and constantly reviewing and cannibalizing and reusing what you've done before. And also, I think watching out to make sure that as many people as possible can benefit. The impact that your solution can have is as broad as possible. So just leave you with that.
Thank you, Jason. So you talked about partnership, and I want to ask Rick. Rick, your team looks at solving real-world challenges by focusing on the relevant research. I'd like you to share with us some of these success factors. We've talked a little bit, but I want to take it from you because you're further up, you're more upstream, right? So what are the factors in commercializing this research and the importance of partnerships, public-private partnerships in finding these solutions? You're on mute, Rick.
Sorry about that. So our researchers are highly motivated to solve challenges, right? So they are just motivated to solve things, right? So this could come in a form of basic research or applied research, right? So perhaps it is because of the nature of our scope of work in AI, right? But more often than not, our researchers conduct applied research. So these are inspired where we work very closely with our partners who usually provided us quality data, right? And coupled with their domain expertise and our AI capabilities and HPC facilities, we deliver AI solutions to our partners. As we may not always provide support and maintenance for their operational needs, so that is where local SMEs, startups could come in to complement, right, to support these partners. So this setup would be a good tripartite framework for the whole ecosystem in Singapore, where each entity will have a role to play, right? Just like I mentioned about more upstream. So even though this applied research that is fairly downstream, we also do good science, right? So we produce excellent research outputs such as publications. So for example, recently we have a piece of work that was actually published in Straits Times in which we use eye images to detect brain diseases. So this work actually has been published in the New England Journal of Medicine, right? So the impact factor is actually 70, which is even higher than Nature and Science that most people are familiar with. But publications aside, our work in multimodal AI for disease diagnosis has potential to be very impactful, where low-cost health screening for the general population could be made possible, for example, in heart disease, kidney disease, and eye diseases. So certainly these areas go beyond just COVID-19.
Thanks for that. I want to bring the discussion a little bit. We talk about COVID-19, right, presenting opportunities, but certainly I think not just in Singapore, but in other countries, there's this whole discussion around privacy, right? Data collection and privacy. So 2 points to this question. First is in terms of data. How do we ensure we're collecting the right amount of data that is representative, that it doesn't become biased? And maybe that's something Lawrence, Jason, well, Rick, all three gentlemen can address that. But also in the areas of privacy, how do we address that? The ethical adoption of AI. That is a very, very important factor. A lot of discussion around that. And each of your roles, how are you looking into these areas? Lawrence, you want to start?
Yeah, sure. So I mentioned the 100 experiments program. We have like awarded about 50 over. We have completed nearly 20 of them. And since IMDA published IMDA PDPC published the AI governance framework, we have adopted that and continue to improve and provide the necessary feedback to the team in the use of that framework in a very practical manner, right? And we try to align. So it's still ongoing, but we are in the midst of improving our internal processes, whether is it project approval to understanding the data to actually the whole AI ML pipeline, to make sure that the AI governance framework is part and parcel of what we do. So that will help to make sure that our engineering team, our business development team is fully aware of what are some of the issues. The other really important part is going back to education. All engineers needs to understand about data biasness and ethics. And that's one thing which is super important when building AI systems. And a lot of people who basically attend, online courses and so on without the proper guidance will say, okay, now I know how to call this scikit-learn, this API. I'm just going to dump this data in. I get this result. Yay, I got my AI model. Without proper training, they will think that they have built a good AI model. But in actual fact, the AI model could include a lot of biasness in there. So I think education is super important in understanding some of these issues. Obviously, they are also beginning to have a lot of tools by various research institutions and commercial vendors that can actually tell you how fair your model is or how explainable your model is. So we are also beginning to look at some of this and to integrate that in as part of our output when we build these AI models. So it's a ongoing problem, ongoing effort to make sure that everyone understands what's at stake. And the other thing that I want to clarify is a lot of people think that, oh, the AI algorithm is biased. Algorithms are never biased. It's the data that's biased, and data are biased because humans are biased.
Yep, important topic that needs certainly needs a lot of attention for us to ensure that the systems are actually turning out well, fair algorithms and results. Jason, did you have something to add?
Yeah, I did. And actually, this actually picks up from a question that I just answered in text. JL had asked the question about, Trace Together's feature set, right? And I think the question of ethics is something that it's not traditionally taught in engineering schools, but I think people are slowly coming around to the idea that, if you think about the governance of technology, broadly speaking, there are kind of three phases, right? One framework of thinking about it. And the first phase, it's so nascent that really, whatever the coder, whatever the developer decides, flies, right? You bake in, certain things. So for Trace Together, for example, we made certain decisions about the privacy features of the app, the data protection features, what we would collect, what we would choose not to collect. Now, obviously, there's going to be a trade-off between privacy on the one hand and utility on the other, right? Again, you have to ask also with any AI system, and I'm broadening the point beyond Trace Together here, as you start taking in data, I think there's one example in the US, it's called Compass. It was a system that was used to decide on the recidivism rate of suspected criminals, right? People who are accused persons. And they found that actually, there became a racial bias. Again, like what Lawrence said, because of the way the data was trained, and because of the fact that you are collecting race data as one of the inputs into the app. Is race data germane and salient? I think there are, ethical considerations around whether you should even be looking at that. I think in different jurisdictions, there are even laws on the human side about whether or not you're allowed to submit photos as part of your job, your CV or resume or job application, right? So these are some issues that I think are not easy to resolve, but I think it would be, remiss of engineers not to realize that these are all germane and valid considerations, and we need to be alive and sensitive to them. Let me see. I think I would just add that for Trace Together, just very specifically, since we're on that topic, we've rolled out a couple of features that I think touch on location data. And we do this using the safe entry system. But we've been very careful not to associate the use of Bluetooth within the Trace Together app itself with the collection of GPS location data on a passive and continuing basis. Now that balance between privacy and utility may well shift in future, but this is where it stands now, right? So that's the first age of, broadly speaking, first age of technology governance. And I think the second age is as a technology starts to go into an organizational mainstream, then it's the board, the management of an organization, a company, a commercial company that decides, what flies and what doesn't fly. And I think you're seeing in Facebook, Twitter, that the use of these instant messaging technologies and the information that's shared and the algorithm that decides what you see on your newsfeed. These then are things that are decided at the organizational level. And I think now what you're seeing in the US and what you saw in Singapore and other countries around the world is a shift toward even a third age of governance, where actually society realizes that the externality effects from the application of the technology, things like Facebook, actually are not something that you can leave entirely to the hands of private individuals and private companies. And maybe society needs to have a view on it. And I think that's a natural evolution of technology, right? You have the first car, and then you start having seatbelt regulation, traffic lights, and the traffic police coming on board. I think this is the natural evolution. There is that same component as well when we talk about new and emerging technologies. Artificial intelligence is sexy, it moves fast, but there is an ethical component, and I think there therefore ought to be a governance perspective as well. Where that governance perspective comes from, who it comes from, I think these are things that continually evolve in society. So thank you for the question.
Yeah, so I see that this our Q&A function and chat box is extremely active. A lot of questions have already been answered. There's this one question, I'm putting it out there because it's been upvoted. A lot of people want to get, I'm not sure whether how well versed we have to answer this, but I'm going to pose it anyway. This from Wilson. Could the panel please comment on the hollowing out of our local engineer ecosystem with downsizing and businesses going out and engineering companies going out during this period? How can we ensure that Singapore will continue to prosper and without the ability to locally prototype hardware at small to mid scale? Do we see this trend reversing or accelerating, and why? And Jason, maybe from the GovTech perspective, we're always looking out, right? We're always looking in terms of, educating in the STEM schools. How are we addressing this? I mean, do you have a view on this?
So I don't know I have a complete answer to this, but I would say, okay, just on the premise of the question, yes, I can understand that there is some anxiety or some sense that we have seen a hollowing out of the local engineer ecosystem. I'm not sure that I would describe it in those terms, but certainly the emphasis has shifted over the years. And I think what we are very conscious now, both at the economic agencies level as well as within the technology space in GovTech and our sister agencies across government, is that there needs to be a reinvestment in engineering. And you're seeing this with I think a more vibrant maker culture, I guess, where people are encouraged to tinker, and it cascades, right? Not just from the labor market, but all the way back into the schools. You want to encourage this as a culture. You want to encourage people to make stuff with their hands. Now, I'm not sure that I would agree that it's hollowed out, because there are examples of companies that have actually done pretty well, and even in the hardware space. If you think that hardware is even harder than software, I mean, Hope Technique is one of our local startups, and it's developed some really innovative robotics and systems that you would associate with much larger companies, much larger industries, and they've been quite successful, right? So I think there is a scope, but I think it needs to start really far upstream, right? It's not about Raspberry Pi projects. I mean, these are just little toy projects, but it's about the mindset that comes with engineering and encouraging kids in secondary school, in polytechnics, and their junior college and university college classes, to just think about building products. Think about building products and enjoying the process of iterating through, learning from the process as you iterate through different product versions. And doing this, whether it's both in software or hardware, and frankly, it doesn't matter. But having that mindset of like, I own something and I'm going to tweak it around the edges, I think can be immensely fulfilling. And I think that's something we need to encourage in both the schools and the workforce.
Thank you, Jason. Lawrence, Rick, do you have any inputs to this question?
Yeah, so I had an opportunity to work with the precision engineering industry many years ago. And what I understand back then was a lot of them were in support of the bigger MNCs that had their manufacturing plants here. And the local shops were basically subcontracted to build very specific parts for them. So, it wasn't really technically very challenging. It was really, please go and manufacture or fabricate this part for me, and that was a large chunk of the local precision engineering companies. I think where we want to go as a country is to, some of these MNCs have already moved out, and therefore the companies, I won't say it's hollowed out, they have followed the MNCs to these other countries, right? That's where the business is. But we as a country will really want to, like what Jason was alluding to get our kids to be really excited about STEM and having that maker culture. Some kids would like to just do programming. Some would like to do the hardware part. Some would like to do both. I think we are seeing a lot of that happening. I mean, nearly every week there's some form of hackathon or whatever that's going on, and schools have so many of these projects that there's so much opportunities for the kids these days in this sort of maker space and prototyping. And the good thing is, unlike 20, 30 years ago, today, a Raspberry Pi or even smaller, lighter systems, right, are only a few dollars. So really, anyone who has the time and the talent can actually embark on learning this on their own. And I think really the thing is, don't wait for the school to launch a formal program. If your kids have the interest, please enable them and just let them go and explore, right? I mean, the internet has so much of these resources freely available.
Yeah. Hey, I'm just conscious of the time. We have 3 minutes more, and I do want to take this question because I think it's important. What is the recommendation in terms of skill sets that need to be picked up to be part of the digital future for a PMED with commercial experience? And I tie this to another question that was stated that, people are losing jobs. So how do we become, continue to be relevant? I guess it goes to the point about continuous learning. And the fact too that Rick, you had also responded to the question is that, yes, being as a mid-career or, not a fresh grad, what we have is years of domain expertise, and that is very valuable. But from the panel, from across from what you've seen, what are the skill sets that people need to be building on to ensure relevance in the digital future and to continue to be employable in the workplace? Rick, can I start with you?
Sure. So I think there's no free lunch, right? To not learn anything new, but yet can take on new trends. For example, like digital, where some of our folks may not be familiar with, right? So I believe that Singapore, with its various initiatives, have many opportunities at very low cost to the individuals in Singapore to pick up new skills, right? So for example, my software engineers, right, who some of them can do full stack, and then we have new ones that come on board, but able to learn from their team members, like new skills in UX, UI, database management, web development, and so on. We continue to send them to courses, right, to learn new tools like Jira, Confluence, Bitbucket, and so on. And they don't just stop at one thing, right? They are hungry for new skills so that they can do more things in this digital era, right? So some of them, actually many of them, pick up machine learning, AI, do projects in AI, right? So coupling, software engineering plus AI is a very, I guess, offer them a very lucrative future in this new era. And those who are really keen to do science, these software engineers also start to pursue part-time PhD while working in A-Star, right? So we have a lot of opportunities within A-Star and of course to the rest of the ecosystem in Singapore to learn and to progress in the future, in the digital future. And I guess across the different ecosystem, GovTech, universities, AI Singapore, and also A-Star, our staff actually have very good exposure to working with public sector agencies and companies, right? Really talking to the ground, right? To really hear from these partners, their key challenges, so that we don't lose track and just focus on technology without certain outlet, right? And for us within A-Star, we continue to do projects and continue in our pursuit of science, right? And certainly we have many mechanisms to support our staff in translating and commercializing the various research outcomes into digital solutions and potentially also some startups.
Thank you. I will say that, because one of the things that SG Innovate does too is we help our startups in filling roles. And we've found that there's a lot of demand for data scientists, developers, and these are in short supply, right? And I think those are areas that are really needed. And you couple that with some domain experience that some of these who've been displaced come with, it'll be a very, very strong combination. Jason, I'm sure from the IMDA, from the GovTech perspective, you're closer to that, right? In terms of being, seeing what kind of demands and what kind of needs the nation is planning for, that are the gaps. So what's your take on that?
So I guess what I would say is the specific skill sets, I think, are almost a symptom or manifestation of the underlying hunger to learn, I think, as what Rick mentioned, right? What we find, at least in software development these days, is it's actually not the programming languages that you learn and pick up along the way. That gets you through the door, right? It lets you hit the ground running. But I think what's more important is so much of programming today is about understanding ways of combining ingredients, different libraries together, thinking about, a system at a high level in terms of its architecture and laying it out in a way that makes sense. It's elegant, modular. You have little self-contained components that are very well laid out together. Now, these are things that I think reach back more into critical thinking as a mindset and the hunger to constantly learn about new techniques of, accomplishing a task, right? So I would say, for me, it's really about learning and listening. I talked about learning already, and I think the other part about listening is understanding what's really happening on the fringes of your organization. If you're in a large organization, and this is true not only of technologists, but even people who are running the business side of things, getting out and leaping over, I think, all the peripheral nervous system connections that your organization has, and understanding what's really happening out there, I think it's really important. If the periphery, if the coalface is manned by people who are working in technology, then I find that actually a critical success factor for the projects that we're working on is, again, the willingness of people that are managing the business, policy, operations side of things to understand what is possible. And I think I mentioned this earlier on. So that connection, constantly wanting to learn and listen, is going to be really, really important, given that technology is fast changing. I think the pandemic has shown us how quickly the external environment can change on us. And if you think about it, any organization, any organism where the internal cycle of change is slower than the external cycle of change is going to be in for constant surprises. So we need to all be, changing our mindsets, being a bit more agile, being a bit more prepared to constantly learn and adapt to the external environment around us in order for us to succeed. So yeah.
Yeah, so I just want to answer something. I answered that question, but I just want to highlight, right? Don't learn programming. It may sound very counterintuitive. Not everybody is cut out for programming. I mean, I do have some of my AI apprentices who are in their 40s and 50s, and they had to spend, 3 years, right, to get to that level. Not everyone has that luxury of time. If you have been working in a non-programming environment for the last 10, 15 years, and you did not come from an engineering or computer science background, and you've never programmed before, what would be more useful is to learn how to analyze data and combine that with your domain expertise. To analyze data doesn't mean you need to doesn't mean you need to program. There are tools, even Excel, right? Or some more advanced drag and drop tools that allow you to analyze the data and combine with your domain expertise, then you can get very useful business insight. Now, that is a more achievable goal for a lot of PMATs. To really, to get PMATs to learn Python and then what? Compete with the fresh grads for a entry-level programming job or AI engineer job. don't make sense. Okay, it does not make sense. They have 20, 30 years of experience. What are they good at? Their domain expertise, right? Now, plus skill. No, I don't like to use a reskill, right? Because they are not going to reskill to a different industry. They are now going to plus skill, learn a new skill, where they can now apply to where they are currently at, but do it much, much better with data. I think that's a more viable, more practical way, more achievable way to maintain your job, or even to move on to a more interesting role.
Thank you. And I think there are common threads. If I look at, and there were some great suggestions, Jason, and there are some suggestions around like how can we utilize the existing pool of talent, reskill them. Maybe those are things that IMDA GovTech could be looking at. Certainly, I think from all the questions that I've seen here, there are common threads, right? Mindset, the openness or willingness to continuously learn, upskill, plus skill, whatever the term is, right? To learn new skills. There are a lot of grants and subsidies that are available to us because there is a huge encouragement to continue to keep ourselves abreast of new areas that we can be learning and skilling ourselves in. But certainly I think that the panel has given us a good range of ideas and insights in how each of you have been dealing with in your own areas to be able to push Singapore even further into the whole digitalization and innovation. And I will realize that we're already about almost 10 minutes out, so I'm being respectful of our panelists' time and also the attendees. We've had a very good turnout. I think close to 300 attended, and I thank you all for all your questions. Apologize that we did not manage to get to all of them, but I know that there were some common threads across all the questions. And please reach out to us and connect with us on LinkedIn and on the various social media channels. And do continue to keep abreast of the things that are happening. There's a whole ton of courses that are available, whether it's from GA, whether it's from SG Innovate, whether from across the organizations that provide that. So keep yourselves abreast of things that are happening. And I thank the panelists for your time today. I thank GA for your strong partnership. And to all of you who joined, stay healthy and have a good day. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.